Welcome to another episode of Real Estate Investing Explained. Here's today's question. How should a newer investor go about structuring their business so that they're ready to start acquiring properties? Do they have to first register a legal business entity, such as an LLC with their state, or can they do it in just their personal names?
I would suggest that before you start getting into LLCs and business structure and all of that other stuff that I'm going to lovingly refer to as just the fluffy stuff right now, I think you really need to focus on networking with lenders, networking with people in your business, going to RIA meetings and finding people with money that may want to partner, finding hard money lenders, finding private money lenders, finding the people that are actually going to help you do deals. Because when you're first starting out, like the LLC is secondary to just doing a deal. The first few properties I bought in my own name. Most of the investors I know, the first few properties they bought were in their personal name. And, if they weren't, right, the LLC part of the equation came after they already had a deal under contract and they were on their way to closing. So I would say that I would remove the focus, of getting your business structure set up and just take all of that time and put it into becoming an expert at finding deals and becoming the best networker in your area and just meeting everyone that wants to do deals, has done deals, and has money to help you do deals.
Yeah, and that happens with not just real estate, right? Because people who are maybe starting a startup or a side hustle, they oftentimes waste a ton of time working on business cards or a website or things that really aren't going to push their business forward. Whereas they could be focusing on really actually selling product, or in this case of real estate, acquiring properties or finding people to partner with, those things that are actually going to really push their business forward rather than focusing on those things that really aren't going to have a material impact. But if somebody's going to keep the property in their personal name rather than an LLC, how do they protect themselves from the potential liabilities that come along with having rental properties and tenants living in your properties?
So it's funny that we were just talking about how LLCs are not the focus when you start out, because they're actually a great way to diminish your liability. Unfortunately, what I've found is that a lot of lenders won't give you 30-year fixed rate loans on small 2 to 4 unit properties if they're owned in an LLC, and that if you own it in your own personal name, it's just a lot easier to get loans. And it's not to say that some lenders won't do it, but it's just a lot easier when they're in your own personal name. And as for protecting yourself, if that is the case, the best strategy is to just get yourself a really, really good insurance policy that includes a liability umbrella. All my buildings have a $2 million liability umbrella that kind of hover over them. So, God forbid there is an issue where I'm then getting sued, I have that layer to protect me. And then outside of that, just be a really good manager, right? Make sure that your buildings are safe. Make sure that you're taking care of them. Make sure that you're providing a building for your tenants to live in that, reduces the amount of potential liability that may come back to haunt you. In New England, right? Get out there and salt your stairways. Make sure your decks are safe and, do your best to make sure that actual liability doesn't come back to get you. But in the event that it does, make sure you have a really good insurance policy to help you out with that. And then as your business grows and progresses, that's when you start to incorporate, LLCs and trusts and all of the other fancy ways to protect yourself.
Yeah, I can speak to that too. I've actually called many, many banks, probably almost 100 for the last deal I was looking at. I was looking to purchase it in an LLC because I wanted that protection that entity provides for you without having to buy the insurance policy. But what you'll find, like Axel said, is that very, very, very few banks will actually lend to an LLC on residential properties, which is less than 4 units. And the reason for that is because banks are generally lending on agency debt, which means they're using the government programs to offer those loans. So they're using Fannie and Freddie Mac to provide their loans. And when they make those loans, they then sell those loans to the government entities. And if they don't conform to their guidelines, they then can't sell those loans and get those loans off their books. So it's very important for the banks to not provide loans to LLCs if they want to be able to sell that debt at a later date. So in general, it is really, really difficult to get a LLC loan on a residential 4-unit or less property. Now, it can be done. You have to find a local small credit union or portfolio lender, which means that they're lending their own money, their own cash, rather than selling that debt to agency debt or using government programs. So it can be done. It's just definitely a lot more difficult. That's all for this episode of Real Estate Investing Explained. Be sure to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, or subscribe to our YouTube channel to get even more free content.